All right, it looks like we are live. I'm going to let some of you roll in and join us. But before we get started, I want to talk to you about maybe the biggest frustrations your guests mention when trying to buy tickets online. Is it a slow checkout? Is it declined cards? Too many steps? Security concerns? I want you to drop that in the conversation that we're having in the chat and let us know what you think. So, before we get started, I'll see you after the intro. All right, welcome back to Live with Sondra. And before I bring up today's guest, I want to first thank our sponsor, GateMaster Technology. At GateMaster, we believe payments should not be an afterthought. They should be a fully integrated experience in your commerce ecosystem, protecting revenue, simplifying operations, and improving guest experience. And today we are speaking my language. We're talking payments, embedded payments, profit protection, chargebacks, and architecture. Because if your payment strategy is not intentional, you may be leaking revenue, whether you see it or not. Now, let's bring somebody, we're going to bring in somebody who lives and breathes this world. Today's session is titled Stop Losing Profits, the Power of Embedded Payments. Today, I'm joined by Mark, and I just asked him how to pronounce this. I should know this, and it makes me nervous. Passifione. Mark, I am so sorry. Passifione, SVP of Integrated Payments at Xplor Pay and valued GateMaster partner. Mark is an experienced commercial leader with deep expertise in embedded payments and building successful partner channels. He's helped SaaS platforms and merchants achieve faster growth through integrated financial technology. And I love this about Mark. He says he keeps his guitar by his desk at all times to reset between calls or when he's in deep thought. Mark, welcome to the show. I told you I was going to get tripped up. I tripped myself up.
That's okay. You know, it's Passifione, and like I said, you're way closer than Siri, who normally calls me Pacify1. So we did good. We did a great job.
I can't believe I did that, but I think I just got nervous there a little bit and got in my head. So I appreciate you giving me some human grace there. But
of course,
before we get started, you know, I was thinking about the first time I met you on a call. And one of the things that I'm really excited about this conversation we're going to have today, and before we jump into some questions, is that I really appreciated how much you were willing to teach me on our first conversation. And it's something that's really important to me. It's something that's really important on this show, when people are willing to share information so that other people can make better decisions about their businesses and what they're doing. And I just wanted to start with that by thanking you for that. But I know I've got quite a lot of questions for you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So my first question for you, if we can just jump in,
Sure.
is, you know, we talk about embedded payments. What does that actually mean for business owners? And in our case, we work in attractions that want to simplify what it looks like to get paid.
Well, I guess in simplest terms, it means that you've integrated payments into your ecosystem, into your system of record, right? But if you think about it for, say, a park or an attraction operator, the way I would think about it, it means A parent can buy a ticket, they can rent a cabana, you could pay for food, you could upgrade to season pass, right? With the idea of never leaving the park application or the gate master application or the point of sale or whatever you're dealing with, right? It means everything lives in one system, and you're creating this client experience that does a couple things. One, it gives people, the customers, less time to be in lines and more time to enjoy the attraction or the park. And for the operator, they eliminate a lot of the end of day reconciliation where you have all these disparate systems that are managing different parts of your business. And so, that's how we typically describe embedded payments.
Yeah, no. And we see like the impact that has on a lot of parks and attractions that are managing multiple systems, oftentimes multiple multiple integrations with regards to credit cards, and how much work that is for them. So I really appreciate you mentioning that. With the how can and I think I've had this conversation with quite a few people over the years about moving to PayFac, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how does PayFac as a service model help attraction operators and businesses scale faster?
I think probably a good way to answer that is that if you are going with the mindset that parks and attraction operators typically are dealing with revenue in a shorter season, right? There's some sort of seasonality. Embedded payments typically lets you onboard new locations faster, open up pop-up retail type of things faster with mobile processing, and get things going instantly. And so you get a much more predictable revenue schedule or an income schedule happening in a quicker fashion. It also helps you to deal with things like, weather conditions, all the outside things that could influence a park, to have a spike or a decline, right, in terms of attendance. And so I think that's probably one of the best things it'll do. The more embedded you are to the customer experience, usually speed to market is what gets addressed the most efficiently. That's really when people use that term, PayFac as a service, they're really talking about speed to market. How fast do I get you up and running, doing whatever it is you want to do? Every place you want to accept payments in your business, just think of all the places in a park you would accept payments. I want to do that quicker, because if I can do it quicker and react to the conditions, I can get more predictable income. And that's, most businesses, that's what they want to have, is something that's measurable and predictable, and have and they can respond to, conditions that are outside their control, right? Like weather.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, in your experience, what is the most common friction point customers face during the checkout that the owners of these businesses often overlook?
It's speed, because what, we all have experienced this. Like, we've all waited in lines before, whether that's a physical queue that you're standing in line at an attraction, or you're on a phone waiting to talk to an operator, or you're in a customer service queue, going through an AI chatbot, right? The idea is, how quickly can I move people? Because people's attention spans have lowered, obviously, from a lot of different things. I won't get critical of social media or anything like that, because I know what we're doing today. But the idea of, people's mindsets have shortened, so it's very important that you create a customer experience where they feel like everything is moving at a very quick pace, right? And you want payments to be almost invisible in that process. One of the best examples of that is probably like the Uber experience, right? You don't even think about it like you're paying to take a ride, because it's already been done. The minute you book the event, the car event, the ride event, that you automatically know that the payment's already happened, and it's blind to the customer, and it doesn't feel like there's any friction at all. And so those are really the two things that, speed eliminates friction, and then the customer experience, how simple can you make the customer experience? Those are probably the two biggest things. And as operators, I think that's a thing that they really want to control, is the customer experience, because especially in park and attraction operators, that's really what you're trying to do for somebody, is give them this incredible experience, right? And you don't want them to have any kind of negative connotation, no matter what part of the experience they're in, right? Whether it's buying food or buying a ticket or buying a membership, you want that all to happen quickly,
Yeah,
without friction. And so that's the biggest thing, is speed, right? Because you can eliminate all the other parts with speed. So,
Yeah. Well, you know what they say.
what's
Money
that?
loves speed.
Yeah, that's true. That's very
It
true.
is true. I love that answer. Well, when I think about like the first step leadership should take to build a more efficient system for like handling chargebacks and disputes. So the other side of speed, right?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Well, I think I'm going to try to relate this to the attraction world if I can. So in the attraction world, like a lot of places, it's usually going to be I didn't go, I didn't authorize the transaction, something happened in ticketing, transactions aren't connected. The real thing that you can do there is have an embedded payment system, right? And one of the reasons that makes it efficient is because now all of a sudden your proof of entry, your purchase history, your digital signatures are all in a common place that are easily accessible by the system of record, in this case, the Gatemaster system. And you can deliver that data back to the operator in a timely fashion so that they can respond to the chargebacks, right? And so I think that's, again, it's speed oriented, but it's how do you deliver all of that data back to the operator in a way that makes it easy for the operator to respond to this type of thing when somebody says, I didn't authorize this,
Yeah.
which is, where most of that is coming from. Over time, I think what that does is it because it becomes easy, it takes away what typically I think the operator feels is a burdensome task, for their staff that they have to deal with. And hopefully you don't get a lot of these, in a park situation, but, I assume that it does happen. So.
Yeah, it does happen. But also what I appreciate about what you're saying too, is like, because of the embedded payments, we have so much more information than you would have if you didn't. I mean, I don't know if I should be admitting this on the show, but like we got IP addresses, we know where it came from. So obviously if that customer is in California and the transaction took place in some other country, you might be able to make a case for fraud for that customer as opposed to it happened in their city, right?
100%. I think you picked up on it exactly. That's what I was saying about the proof of entry, the purchase history, the digital signatures. They're all in the same place. So all of a sudden you have a very undisputable fact line that says that this person was actually here. There's no denying it. Right.
Right. Yeah. No, and that's something I like to mention. I mentioned to a lot of the parks that we work with is this is why this is so important, because while we can't stop this from happening 100% of the time, we're going to give you some tools to make sure that we can at least reduce the pain of it.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, and that's exactly the way to think about it.
Yeah. Well, how can like automating the dispute management process directly impact the bottom line for these attractions?
So there's a couple ways. So every embedded payment platform doesn't do this, or they do them to different degree of different ways, because a lot of them this happens outside of their system. But good ones, I'm going to put us in that category. They're able to deal with this in a way that gives all of that data to the operator in a very fast way, right? So what does that mean? Well, that means that typically we win way more than we lose, right? So what we refer to as our win rate, on chargebacks is highly significant because two things. One, you have all of the data like we previously talked about in a simple place. And more importantly than that, you can respond quicker to chargebacks. What you'll see a lot of times is people don't respond quick to disputes because it's a pain in the neck, to be quite honest, right? So it's like one of those things you put off. It's kind of like taxes, right? I don't want to go do that because it's a pain. But the reality of it is the quicker you get it off your hair and get it off your plate. And so if the system can provide you with a good amount of data that's accurate data, you can respond with, like I said, overwhelming facts that it happened, but in a more timely fashion is almost as important. It's how quick you can respond to these events, because the more they drag out, the higher likelihood is you probably lose that, right?
Yeah.
And in a business like this, chargebacks probably have a bigger issue because of the seasonality, right? Because in a seasonal business, again, you have that shorter time frame to revenue, and so chargebacks, it compresses more, right? You're not averaging over 12 months, your chargeback rate could seem a little more, intense, right? So
yeah, for sure. Well, and that kind of like makes me think about like the right payment architecture and how that acts as like a silent partner in protecting the business from fraud, right?
yeah, exactly. It's you hit it right on the right on the right point, right? It's especially when you start talking to things like online ticket spikes or high day of traffics, right? You want something in the background that's really doing a good job taking care of that data to reduce fraud risk, right? Things like card tokenization, updating expired cards on file automatically, typically referred to as card updating. We can automate those processes with embedded payments so that we don't worry when somebody's buying a season pass that the card we have on file is dated or was compromised, and so they had to get a new one, and we didn't have that number on file. You optimize approvals that way, which means you get less time having to go back and check, run kind of like almost like a loop back to go back to people to say, oh, your card expired, and all of that kind of thing all over again. And so all of those things optimize approvals, right? And so what that means is you get more sales with less fraud, right? That's really what everyone wants, right? Because that kind of automation impacts the bottom line immediately because of both of those things happening, right? The fraud goes down, you get more approvals, those equal more revenue, right?
Well, also I think, and just kind of to your point on what you're saying, with our attractions, we're seeing such high volume in those short seasonal months compared to like most brick and mortar, right? They're not 15,000 attendees in one day. I mean, this is like stadium numbers that we're seeing over a period. I have one customer who's seen 350,000 people in a 3-week period, right?
Yeah.
There are big numbers that they're dealing with, and so they don't want a lot of that fraud and chargeback to have to do it.
I never told you this, but I actually got my start in the payment business. One of the very first projects that I worked on, we were automating a ticketing system for what now is Ticketmaster. At the time, it was called Bass Tickets. It was Bay Area, California Bay Area ticket outlet. And so what the problem we were trying to solve for is, the Rolling Stones tickets go on sale and everyone needs, so you can imagine, right? Everyone is piling into this 1-800 number to buy tickets, in a short period of time. And in those days, this is pre-internet, and there wasn't a fast way to get transactions going through unless you had high lease lines, which were very, very expensive at the time. People couldn't afford to do that to sell tickets, and so it was an interesting thing to solve. But it was the same kind of thing, right? Like, how do we do all of this very, very quickly because the window is so short? All the tickets are gone in hours typically, right? You can see how concerts work today. I mean, people have bots working in the background to buy the tickets so the secondary market can blow up, right? So I mean, it's think of how fast you have to make those payments to have all of those tickets gone in 20 minutes, right? That type of thing. So
we had one customer, I think they were doing like thousands of hits to their system in seconds. Like we were monitoring it, and it was wild. It's a unique situation because they do a big sell. They sell out every year, so their customers have been trained to buy. I think it's like 58,000 tickets get sold in a period of like 2 days, which is pretty insane.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like that's when you start thinking about it, and so that's where you to avoid chargebacks and disputes, you want to have some good fraud mechanisms up front. So tokenization, card updating, all of those kinds of things help you get more approvals quicker, right? And so that's because card on file is always a quicker transaction, right? Because no one has to type anything in. I already have it on file. It's you can just process it, right? And it goes quickly. So that's a great way to think about it, Sondra. You got it down.
Well, thank you. I've been dealing with payments a long time too, but it's always nice to meet somebody else who's been here even, probably even had more experience with that. And like I said, I was excited to have you on the show today because you've always taught me things when we've been on conversations. Yeah. So I'm curious, with regards to, why is it becoming critical for vertical SaaS platforms to integrate directly into their core software?
Well, for the vertical software guys, so I'm going to start there, not talk about the operators, but the actual vertical software guys, and I'll work my way to like a park operator. For vertical SaaS, there are a lot of people are getting pushed that way, right? Because if they start a vertical SaaS company with the intent of selling or going public or getting bought by a larger company, obviously what vertical payments does, embedded payments, it creates this revenue opportunity that gives them additional line of revenue, right? So that's part of it. But the real key to it is, and this is what helps the operator, is the fact that the operator really is the brand, right? So that's the brand that you're trying to protect and promote. And when you build payments into your platform, you can completely control the customer experience that represents your brand. And ultimately, controlling that customer experience for the operator is the real reason why you want embedded software, right? Because you can eliminate all of the friction points. You can completely control the experience that that person has, and they associate that with your brand, right? I don't want to talk badly because I think they've done a great job of improving it, but I'll give you an example. Like if anyone had to experience Comcast, say 15 years ago for a support issue, like if you worked with them, you hated the call, right? Because you were yelling at the phone. It was that bad, right? They went through a series of things where they went to BPO, and now they've automated it pretty well. And with the inclusion of bringing in like self-help tools, and people have become more adept at going online and seeing the status and help, they can reset their TV on their phone, that kind of thing. Those kinds of things have made it easier. And so I think the idea of the same thing, the more you integrate into your systems, the more you can control your own customer experience. And that, to me, in my opinion, it's very opinion oriented, but in my opinion, what that does is it really gives the operator the best possible outcome because their brand is protected. They create their own experience, right? Into a single thing. And it becomes, hey, it's a day in the park, right?
Yeah.
It's I made it easy for people to spend money at my park. And what's that mean typically? I had a great experience. I typically spend more money, right? When I'm having a good experience, it's because it's like, hey, this is great. I almost always come back, right? Which is, I don't know if you can ask for much more, right? As an operator.
No,
So,
and just as a person who visits parks too, because I'm also an enthusiast, I would say like the times where I'm having the best time and not having that friction are the times that I don't mind spending the money either, right? Like people don't look back on that typically when they had the time of their life.
Yeah, exactly.
And payments weren't an issue as part of that experience, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's all about customer experience, and the reason that's important is because it represents the brand, right? And if you own a series of water parks or you own a series of attractions, you want that brand. I mean, we all know this from the Giant, right? I mean, Disney, like they protect that brand, right? It's a super important thing. And you don't have to be Disney to want to have a good brand, right?
I agree.
You may want to be the best one in Roseville, California, right? And that's it's a small town. There's only one, but it's good. It's actually a good one. So
that's awesome. Well, what is one strategy you implement to help partners transition from like traditional processing to integrated payments or fully integrated payments?
Yeah. So I think the best way to answer this is the way that we do it. Now, there's a lot of ways to do this, so I don't want to make this sound like this is the end all be all. But what we found works really well is having partner development managers. You might call them an account manager or relationship manager. We start with them mapping the guest journey, right, from an online ticket purchase to in-park spending. And we start looking at all of the ways that they could possibly have an interaction with a payment event, right? I think what that does is it gives you a true understanding of, how to follow the money, so to speak, right? And map the journey and figure out what could be the possible friction points that people could run into, and how can I be innovative and make that an easier experience for them. Right. And we're starting to see this more and more, everything from wearables to mobile payments. I've seen parks, that where you have a chip in your, you just, like the cruise ship, right? You just pop your bracelet, and you're spending money all day long. I go to an event every year. I've been doing this for, I don't know, as long as it's been doing, I think, an event called Bottle Rock. It's a festival. It's a music festival. It's in the Bay Area. It's in Napa. So it's kind of like I call it a music festival for a little older adults, because it's sponsored by like 25 wineries, and they have, groups. I don't want to say my age, but from older groups typically mixed with younger groups. And it's really cool. And they have a food event and really nice food. I mean, it's not hot dogs, right? And they've automated it to the point now where you walk in, you get a band, you pre-get your band. It's tied to your Venmo account or your Zelle account or your Cash App account. So a person-to-person account, not your card. And as you go through the event all day, you just, anything you want, you just pop it on your wrist. I mean, it's scary at the end, right? When you look at that bill on the way home, your Venmo, but it's hitting you all the way. And it's a very, very good feeling. It makes you feel relaxed. You're not carrying money in your pocket. You don't have to do change. And, could you get a little crazy? Probably, like no different than a cruise ship, but it's I think it's a great way to do it. And so I think we're going to see more and more of the wearables. I mean, you probably see this more than I have. I've only experienced it in the music in music venues so far. But I think that, to me, you plot that journey of the customer, because you want to see it through the customer's eyes. And then as we do that, we see how that relates to the admin, the back end people that have to deal with it, right? Because, when you want an easy customer experience, but you also want to try to lessen the burden on the admin for the team, right? You don't want it to be a heavy reconciliation. And so you try to minimize the amount of reconciliation and the availability of reporting, so that people have clear visibility, right, to how stuff is getting spent. Because eventually that gives you really good analytical data to make proper decisions. Is it working? Should I replicate this? Those types of things. It would help, any kind of business owner, whether it's attraction or park or anything else, right, make better informed decisions, right? So that's how we do it. And I think it's one of the better ways. I think it works really well. They bring a different set of skills, these people, typically, than our BD reps or our sales reps, right, who are very skilled, but this is a different set of skills, right? This is a set of skills where they get really in the weeds a little bit more, right? And when you force people to get in the weeds, I think you learn a lot more about their business. So it's fun. I think it's like having free consulting is what I tell people. It's not a bad thing.
No, and it's good to have experts who understand. And I have a couple things to say about that, all of that. One, I'm gonna have to come out there for that festival. I love Napa. And actually, my boss, the founder of our company, I think I've told you, he's out in the Bay Area.
And you got a reason. There you go.
Yeah, he's one of the few people actually born in San Francisco.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah. So, but two, I love what you mentioned about just how it was so easy to go around and get what you wanted. And they've created what, I've been really looking at is like the yes experience. Like, you never have the friction. You always just get what you want and what you need. And so it also allows the guests to create their own experience in many ways too. And I think that's really important for people today.
Listen, I think creative mind like yours, you could get very innovative with the technology that exists now, right? Because it's, I think people who are creative and they want to get innovative, they could kind of do almost exactly as you said, like, do the attraction your way, right? Almost plotting out your ride selection in order. I think some people try to do this, right? It just becomes difficult because the systems don't allow them to do it. But it would be things like that, right? Where you could just have your day almost planned, right? And some people want to live like that. And then, you got the other people who are like, I'm going to go over to this winery right now, and maybe I'm going to go to this food, just kind of chill, so it's, I love it. I love the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should definitely go. You should definitely go to the show.
I would like to. Actually,
I
did something new this year. I went to the Waste Management Phoenix Open.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of fun, I'm sure.
We were in a suite, and same thing. They put the wristbands on us, and we were all over the place. They had the day club, drinks, food, and it was just it changes the experience when you have the freedom to just move around and do it the way that you want to do it. And
That's
even
right.
if it's on a whim, I will say this though, when I go to Disneyland, I always start with the tiki room. My grandfather used to start that way. So for some people, it is tradition, right? Like they have their tradition when they visit some of our parks. But for something like this, you want to give people the flexibility, and I think that's really important to guests these days to be able to choose that.
Oh, I'm a fan of Dole, so I used to go to Tiki Room too, and I like the birds. So it was fun. So it's one of my favorites too, and it's also shaded, and I'm usually there when it's hot, so it's kind of nice to be inside like that for a minute, right?
Oh, my grandfather loved it so much he named my Aunt Suzette after one of the birds.
You got a Dole Whip, I'm sure, right? Yeah, you can't go in there without getting one.
So. Well, Mark. So I know you said you keep a guitar by your desk. How does that? I always like to ask some more personal questions for our guests, but how does that creative reset help you solve these complex technical problems that you see in the payment world? Because I know, I'm so grateful to know you and to be a partner with you, because I know that you have so much experience in this industry, but also I know you're solving some very complex problems.
Well, I think everyone kind of has a way to unwind and relax, and guitar's an interesting. I think any kind of musical instrument probably does this, right? We have Stephanie who's coming out to the show conference. She actually has a harp by her desk, right?
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah, really cool. And so I think what happens a lot of times is people that play music, they have it kind of turns your mind off, because a lot of it is kind of like it's just a different part of your brain that's being used. And I think getting away from the hyper sequenced motions that you run when you're trying to solve problems, and it's just very sequential. Music is not, right? So you use a different part of your brain, and all of a sudden you're kind of transcended. And when you come back, it really does feel like you took a nap for 20 minutes. And and I think that probably would work just as well too. Certain people, right, are good. They can take these power naps. But for me, that's what it does. And it also, I think, for me, that's one of the more creative things that I do outside of work, right? And so it helps me get creative. And I mean, when you're solving problems, bringing creativity is important a lot of times, especially when you're trying to marry something. I mean, it sometimes can be as boring as payments, right, and very technical and boring, to a cool guest experience, like I operate a water park and I get to watch people smile all day, right? I mean, it's like, it's kind of cool to turn your mind off for a second, come back, and then I think a lot of times you come back with ideas that are not in the basic box, right? You start to get outside the box a little bit, which I think that's where the interesting stuff is, right? Outside the box, usually, for me anyway.
I don't know if I ever told you that we did. I mean, this was a long time ago. We did this thing called park tabs, and we still have it. It's it's essentially like a bar tab inside of a park.
Yeah.
The first chips came out. The first chips on the card came out. I spilt my coffee in my purse.
Oh.
And then my cards worked after that, and I was like, wait a second, this isn't going to work in a water park. So to your point, I feel like to solve these problems, you have to come with a lot of creativity. You have to be willing to think about all the things. And just spilling, and this was many years ago, but just spilling water in my purse, or my coffee in my purse, and realizing that this wasn't going to work in water parks. It was going to be real hard for somebody to carry a chip in a wetsuit, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Around, how could we solve that problem? And that's what kind of where the park tabs came in. So I think it's really interesting, because I also consider myself a creative person. I don't have the skill of music. My kids all do, which is great. That's one skill and thing that I really envy in other people. Nobody wants to hear me sing.
I don't know that I'm much of a singer, but I can play a little. So it's very much something I picked up pretty easily, because I think a lot my dad was musical. A lot of my family members have good musical and skills, and so I think there is a little bit of heredity in there. I think I don't know for sure, but it seems like there is, right?
Yeah, I think so. You know, my husband was very musical, so you know, my son plays his guitar that he had when he was a kid.
Oh,
Still,
that's
so
cool.
I wish you could say it came from me. It didn't come from me though.
Yeah.
The I'm more on the athletic side, which also is very, in many ways, creative for me.
Yeah, 100%. You can get creative with that too.
Yeah, I think sometimes some of my best ideas came from a hot yoga session, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Well, so before I let you go, I
Yeah.
just have one last question because I know that you are someone who has a lot of experience with this and you've helped a lot of merchants. And I'm curious, you know, what is the most rewarding part of seeing a merchant's life to become better through the technology that you've helped build?
You know, if I was to answer that, I think it always feels good when they tell you that, you know, the business is booming, the revenue's up, my life is easier for my finance team. But if you put that in like terms for like a water park or traction operator, right? What would make me feel good is they walk up and they say, our lines are shorter, the per cap spending is higher, our finance team closes to the books every day in minutes instead of hours, right? Those are the kind of things that you live for, right? You know, and I'd love to hear them say, you know, we help turn a busy summer day into predictable revenue, right? Or scalable revenue, or whatever you want to call it, right? It just becomes easy, right? And I think we live for that, right? When that happens, it's kind of magic. It really is, because usually those businesses are extremely successful and remain successful for long periods of time. I've seen it happen several times. I mean, it's one of the ways we actually lose customers, right? They just grow to the point where they get bought by some giant PE firm and then we never see them again, you know, or something like that. But it's you know, more power to them at that point, right? I mean, that was their goal. That's why they started their business. You know, some people start it as a legacy to hand to their children. Some people start it because they want to make a ton of money. You know, it just depends on where people want to go. But I think that's the biggest reward, right? Is the feedback from the actual, whether it be a software company or the operators of a park, or even, you know, a small little merchant running retail in a mobile, you know, in a farmer's market, right? It just feels good when they tell you it made my life easier, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And things are going better. And I think that's most of us. That's why we do it, and we get that feedback a lot. You'd be surprising, right? Because the people don't know what they don't know, right? And then when they find out that it can be easier and it can be less friction and you can have a better customer experience and your customers will love it and come back more and even tell you that stuff, it just, you know, it's a good feeling, right? I think we all want that. Like, no one wants bad feelings, right?
100%. You know, one of the greatest things that you kind of touched on this a little bit, but one of the coolest things for me in the last 25 years, having started, I mean, I started when we were moving people from manual Casio selling tickets to software, and you know, we had to teach people how to use a mouse. Because for many of these parks, this was the first time that they'd even touched computers, their teams. But one of the things that really there was a pivotal point for me when the revenue managers didn't have to be there all night. And I knew they weren't there all night because I ran the support department, and we would take those calls in the middle of the night to help them reconcile their books. And when they didn't have to be there all night anymore, it was such a big moment for me in improving the experience. And I know that you guys have done a lot to help with that over the years. So
yeah, it's a big emphasis, right? I mean, you want the customer to have a great experience, but you really got to have your staff you got to make it easier for your staff, right? Because those are the people that really make your business roll, right? You have to appreciate your team. You know, your team is usually everything. That's, in many cases, that is the business, right? Like, I mean, so
for sure.
You have to make sure that that you're not making it harder for them, right? And again, it's because they don't know what they don't know, right? When all of a sudden you make it easier for them. You know, I'm old enough to remember, you know, reconciling a checkbook where you went through and checked all the checks off that were there, and you think back to that and you think, why would I just check all the ones there? Why don't I just know the 5 that aren't there, right? That's the only thing I care about. And so that, you know, it'd be interesting to to see, like, I think we've done that with electronic payments. Like, we've kind of changed that whole concept of, instead of checking all the ones that are there, here's the 3 that you have to go find, right? These are the 3 that are messed up, right? The 3 transactions,
Right.
which I think that's a beautiful thing in itself, right? Because that changes the paradigm in terms of reconciliation, because you get rid of all the discovery part, right? It's just, now I just got to deal with the 2 or 3 that are wrong instead of the 500 that are right. So I like that. I mean, that feels good.
It does. Well, Mark, this has been such an important conversation, and I know that you and Xplor Pay are doing amazing things in the payment world. And I'm, before I let you go, what is the best way for our audience if they want to engage with you and your team? What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I think that probably the easiest way would be for them to, if you can go to our website, which is www.xplorpay.com, which is spelled XPLORPAY. You can fill out a form on there, and we'll get someone to talk to you as quick as possible. And you can also just, browse the site and learn a lot about what we do. And if you have some interest, we'd love to talk to you.
And tell them Sondra sent you.
Yeah, don't forget to tell them Sondra sent you. Sondra live.
Mark Passifione, right? I got it right that time.
Got it. Killed it.
I don't know how I got that wrong, but I do want to also personally thank you and your Xplor Pay team for being a sponsor for our GT Summit that's happening on the 11th and 12th. We are incredibly grateful for partners like you who are committed to helping attractions grow smarter and stronger, and super excited to have your team here. But thank you so much for being a part of that.
Yeah, well, no worries. And they're excited too. Like, our team's excited to meet all of you and all the people that, use the systems and the park operators, and they're going to love it. They're loving it.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you being here today and spending so much time with me. And thank you. Till next time.
Yeah, excellent. Nice
Awesome.
seeing you.
I'll
Bye,
see you
Sondra.
soon. Bye, Mark. All right, so I feel like I learned a lot. Every time I get a chance to talk to Mark, I learn a lot. But I wanted to just make sure that we covered a couple of things before I let you go today. And that is, if you are not thinking about embedded payments or integrated architectures, you are leaving margins on the table. We know this, we can see it in the data, and we want to make sure that you have what you need to better the experience for your guests and your teams, as we talked about today. And if you haven't secured your spot yet to our GT Summit, you can still grab one of those tickets or get a virtual ticket to join us. It's going to be 2 powerful days focused on revenue, operations, leadership, and technology that is impacting our industry. I want to thank Mark again for being here and for, and thank him for his partnership with GateMaster. Payments are not just transactions, they are infrastructure, they are protection, they are growth strategy. And I want to thank everyone who has joined us today, either live or if you're listening on replay, #replay, so I know you were here. Feel free to leave any comments. We'll be monitoring the chats for a while, but we really appreciate you supporting us and supporting this industry and getting better at what we do. This is Live with Sondra. And until next time, I hope you just get better, stronger, more profitable, and experience the abundance that your attraction needs. I'll see you next time.